I'm Major Nikki Voss, 38, United States Air Force. I worked my way up from an ROTC scholarship kid to leading ISR missions over Kandahar, coordinating extractions under fire, and earning a Purple Heart I never asked for. For years, I gave everything to my family, defending them, honoring their service, trying to earn a respect they never gave back. But at my own Purple Heart ceremony, when my brother laughed and my father said I couldn't even fire a rifle straight, something in me finally broke. I made a choice that day to stop proving myself to people who'd already decided not to see me. Have you ever been mocked or underestimated by the people you loved most? If so, tell me your story in the comments. You're not alone. Before I get into what happened, let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever had to stand up for yourself after being dismissed or humiliated, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about setting boundaries and reclaiming your worth. What happened next might surprise you. I stood in the center of the Fort Benning conference room, my dress blues pressed sharp, my Purple Heart citation being read aloud by General Patrick Sloan. The words echoed off the walls, sustained injuries while extracting a downed crew under hostile fire in Kandahar province, but all I could hear was my brother's voice cutting through the ceremony like a knife. She got lucky. Ryan said it just loud enough for our family section to hear. My father, retired Sergeant First Class Douglas Voss, chuckled beside him. The sound was low, dismissive, the kind of laugh that said he agreed completely. Couldn't even fire a rifle straight, Dad added, shaking his head. I kept my eyes forward, my jaw tight. The general paused mid-sentence, his gaze flicking toward my family, then back to me. I gave him the smallest nod. Keep going. I'd spent my entire military career proving myself to people who refused to see me, and today wasn't going to be any different. But then General Sloan did something I didn't expect. He closed the folder in his hands and turned toward the screen mounted on the wall behind him. Before we proceed with the medal presentation, he said, his voice calm but carrying an edge that made the room go still, I think it's important that everyone here understands exactly what Major Voss did that day. My stomach dropped. Roll the video, he said. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered to life, and suddenly I was back in Kandahar, the grainy helmet cam footage showing the chaos I'd tried so hard to forget. The sound of rotor wash filled the room. Explosions. Screaming over comms. My own voice, hoarse and sharp, calling coordinates while rounds pinged off metal around me. I didn't want to watch. I'd never seen the footage before, hadn't known it existed. But I couldn't look away. The camera showed my hands dragging Captain Tessa Marlowe across the tarmac, her flight suit torn and bloodied, her leg twisted at an angle that made people in the audience gasp. The insurgents had hit our extraction point hard, targeting the downed helicopter crew we'd been sent to recover. I'd been coordinating the air support, calling in strikes while our ground team tried to secure the perimeter. Then the mortar round hit. The footage shook violently. When it stabilized, I was on the ground, blood streaming down my face from the shrapnel that had torn through my helmet. But I was moving, crawling toward Marlowe, firing my sidearm at the figures advancing from the tree line. Someone in the audience whispered, Jesus Christ. I remembered that moment. The way my vision had blurred. The way my hands had felt numb. The way I'd known with absolute certainty that if I stopped moving, we were both dead. The footage showed me hauling Marlowe behind a concrete barrier, then keying my radio with shaking hands. My voice came through the speakers, clearer than I remembered it being. Viper 1-2, this is Overwatch. We are taking effective fire from the north tree line. I have one wounded, need immediate extract, over. The reply crackled back. Overwatch, Viper 1-2. Extract bird is 2 mics out. Can you hold? Negative choice, Viper. We hold or we die. Send it. The camera captured me checking Marlowe's pulse, applying a tourniquet with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, then returning fire with a rifle I'd pulled off a wounded soldier near me. The shots were controlled. Precise. 3-round bursts that dropped 2 insurgents before the helicopter screamed in overhead. The footage cut to black. The lights came up slowly. The room was silent. I finally let myself look at my family. My father's face had gone pale. My mother's hand was pressed to her mouth, her eyes wet. Ryan looked like he'd been punched in the stomach, his earlier smirk completely gone. General Sloan turned back to the audience, his expression unreadable. Major Voss coordinated air support under direct enemy fire while sustaining a traumatic head injury and severe lacerations. She maintained her position for 11 minutes, well past the point where most personnel would have been combat ineffective, and successfully extracted her teammate. Captain Marlowe survived because of Major Voss's actions that day. He picked up the Purple Heart from its case and crossed the room to where I stood. "Major Nicky Voss," he said, his voice formal now, ceremonial, "for wounds received in action against an enemy of the United States, it is my honor to present you with the Purple Heart." He pinned the medal to my uniform. I saluted. He returned it. Then he leaned in, just slightly, and said something only I could hear. "Your family needed to see that. Don't let anyone diminish what you did." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. The ceremony ended with applause that felt distant, like it was happening in another room. People shook my hand, thanked me for my service, said things I didn't fully register. My commanding officer, Colonel David Kerr, clapped me on the shoulder and told me he was proud. My fellow officers from the ISR squadron formed a line to congratulate me, their respect genuine and unforced. But my family stayed in their seats. I found them afterward in the parking lot. They'd been waiting by my father's truck, awkward and uncertain. My mother moved first, stepping toward me with her arms half raised like she wanted to hug me but wasn't sure if she should. "Nikki," she said. Her voice broke on my name. I stopped a few feet away, the metal case heavy in my hands. "You came. That's something." "We didn't know," Dad said. He looked older than I remembered, his shoulders slumped in a way that didn't match the straight-backed sergeant he used to be. "We didn't know it was like that. You never asked." Ryan stepped forward, his hands shoved in his pockets. "Look, he stopped, struggled, tried again. "That thing I said in there. I shouldn't have. You've been saying things like that for years," I said. My voice was calm, almost detached. "Today you just said it in the wrong room." "That's not fair," he said. "No," I agreed. "It's not." My mother was crying now, silent tears that she didn't bother wiping away. "We're proud of you, sweetie. We always have been." I wanted to believe her. Some part of me, the part that was still the little girl trying to earn her father's approval, still the teenager who'd joined ROTC hoping it would make her family see her as more than the soft youngest child, wanted desperately to believe her. But I'd spent too many years hearing the jokes. Too many deployments with no calls. Too many promotions celebrated alone. "I have to go," I said. "Thank you for coming." I walked to my car without looking back. Behind me, I heard my father say something to my mother, his voice too low to make out. Ryan called my name once, but I didn't stop. I drove home to my quiet base housing unit, set the metal case on the kitchen counter, and sat in the dark for a long time. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't unfamiliar. I'd learned to live with it years ago, learned to find strength in the spaces between words where my family's approval should have been. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a moment, then set the phone face down on the table. "Not tonight. Maybe not ever." Some wounds took longer to heal than others, and not all of them left scars you could see. The joke started when I was 17, right after I told my family I'd accepted an ROTC scholarship to pursue a commission in the Air Force. We were at a barbecue, one of those late summer gatherings where the whole extended family showed up and Dad manned the grill like it was a command post. My uncle had laughed first. "Air Force? That's basically corporate America with uniforms." Dad had flipped a burger, shaking his head. "Could have been Army. Could have been something real." Ryan, who was 14 at the time and already talking about enlisting in the Marines, had grinned at me across the picnic table. "At least you'll get good hotel points." Everyone laughed. Even Mom, though hers was quieter, more uncertain. I'd forced a smile and changed the subject, but the message was clear. I'd chosen wrong. I'd taken the easy path. I wasn't a real soldier. It only got worse after I commissioned. When I graduated from flight school and got assigned to intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance operations, Dad asked me if I was actually going to fly or just watch other people do the work. When I made captain at 29, ahead of schedule, ahead of most of my peers, Ryan posted on Facebook about how rank comes fast when you're not in real danger. I stopped sharing my achievements with them. Stopped calling after missions. Stopped trying to explain that ISR wasn't some desk job, that coordinating drone strikes and managing intelligence assets required split-second decisions that could mean life or death for people on the ground. They didn't want to know. They'd already decided who I was. By the time I deployed to Kandahar, the distance between us had become routine. They sent the occasional care package, the kind you send because it's expected, not because you care, and texted once or twice a month with messages that felt like they'd been copy-pasted from a template. Stay safe. Don't do anything stupid. That was Mom's standard sign-off. Not, I'm proud of you or we miss you. Just a reminder not to embarrass them by getting killed doing something that proved them right about the Air Force being dangerous after all. I'd grown up in a military household. Dad had served 22 years in the Army, retiring as a sergeant first class after tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He wore his service like armor, told stories about firefights and convoys, about the brotherhood of infantry soldiers who trusted each other with their lives. Ryan had followed in his footsteps, enlisting in the Marines right out of high school. He was a corporal now, stationed at Camp Lejeune, and every family gathering became an opportunity for him and Dad to trade war stories while I sat quietly on the sidelines. To them, the Air Force was soft. Officers were bureaucrats. And women, well, women in combat roles were still a novelty, still something to be skeptical about. I'd proven myself 100 times over. I'd graduated top of my class at the Air Force Academy. I'd completed survival training, weapons qualifications, combat readiness courses. I'd flown missions over hostile territory, managed multi-million-dollar intelligence operations, earned the respect of my peers and superiors. But none of it mattered to my family. I was still just Nikki, the youngest, the one who'd chosen the easy branch. When I got injured in Kandahar and they told me I was being put up for a Purple Heart, my first thought wasn't pride. It was dread. Because I knew my family would come. And I knew what they'd say. The ceremony invitation had been formal, printed on heavy cardstock with the official seal of the United States Air Force at the top. I'd sent it to my parents' address with a note that said simply, "Hope you can make it." They'd RSVP'd yes. All three of them. I'd spent the week leading up to the ceremony trying to prepare myself. Practicing what I'd say if they made another joke. Rehearsing polite responses to their inevitable questions about whether the injury was really that bad or if I was milking it for the medal. But I hadn't prepared for the video. Hadn't known it existed. General Sloan had pulled me aside the day before the ceremony to ask if I'd be comfortable with them showing footage from the incident. "It's powerful," he'd said. "And I think people need to see what actually happened out there." I'd agreed, assuming it would be brief. Sanitized. The kind of thing they show at recruiting events. I hadn't realized they had 11 minutes of unedited helmet cam footage showing exactly how close I'd come to dying. Hadn't realized the whole room, including my family, would watch me bleed and fight and refuse to quit while insurgents tried to kill me and the teammate I was trying to save. After I left the parking lot and drove home, I sat in my kitchen and stared at the Purple Heart case for a long time. The medal itself was simple. A purple heart-shaped badge with George Washington's profile in the center, suspended from a purple ribbon with white edges. It represented pain, sacrifice, blood spilled in service of something larger than myself. But when I looked at it, all I could think about was Ryan's voice. She got lucky. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Ryan. "I mean it. I want to talk." Then one from Dad. "Proud of you, kiddo. Always have been." I read them both twice, then set the phone down. Words were easy. Words cost nothing. I'd heard "proud of you" before, usually followed by some qualifier that undercut the whole thing. "Proud of you, but you know the Marines see more action." "Proud of you, even though you picked the Air Force." What I needed wasn't words. It was years of accumulated respect that I'd never received. It was recognition that my service mattered, that my choices had been valid, that I'd earned my place at the table where they told their war stories. And I wasn't sure they could give me that. I opened my laptop and pulled up my email. There was a message from Colonel Kerr with the subject line "New Assignment, Training Command." I clicked it open. "Major Voss, in light of your recent commendation and your exemplary performance in ISR operations, I'm recommending you for a position with the UV training program at Creech AFB. It's a leadership role, working directly with junior officers transitioning into combat operations. If you're interested, we can discuss details next week. Colonel Kerr, I read it 3 times. A training command position was a career maker. It meant respect, responsibility, the chance to shape the next generation of Air Force officers. It meant my work, my real work, not the sanitized version my family imagined, would have a lasting impact. It also meant leaving behind any chance of regular contact with my family. Creech was in Nevada. They were in North Carolina. The distance would become literal as well as emotional. I typed out a response. Sir, very interested. Let's discuss Monday. Thank you for the recommendation. Major Voss, I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I stood up, walked to the bathroom, and finally looked at myself in the mirror. The scar from the shrapnel ran along my hairline, a thin white line that would fade with time but never fully disappear. My eyes looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from years of fighting battles I shouldn't have had to fight. I thought about the video. About the woman I'd watched on that screen, bleeding and terrified but moving anyway. Doing her job because people were counting on her. That woman didn't need her family's approval. She already knew what she was worth. Ryan called 3 times over the next 2 days. I didn't answer. Dad sent an email, long, rambling, full of the kind of military anecdotes he usually reserved for other veterans. He talked about his own injuries, about moments in Iraq when he'd thought he wouldn't make it home, about how seeing my footage had reminded him of things he'd tried to forget. He ended with, "You're a better soldier than I ever was." I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I saved the email but didn't respond. Mom left a voicemail. She cried through most of it. Please call us back, sweetie. We love you. We just want to talk. I listened to it twice, then deleted it. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't punishing them. I was simply done. Done explaining. Done defending. Done trying to translate my service into terms they'd understand. Done pretending their occasional shows of pride meant anything when they'd spent years teaching me that nothing I did would ever be enough. The medal sat on my kitchen counter for a week before I finally put it away in the drawer with my other commendations. Out of sight, but not forgotten. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into preparing for the training command position, reaching out to contacts at Creech, studying the curriculum, thinking about how I'd approach teaching young officers the realities of combat operations. My ISR squadron held a small going-away gathering at the O Club. Captain Marlowe showed up on crutches, still recovering from the injuries she'd sustained in Kandahar. She hugged me hard enough that I had to study both of us. I never thanked you properly, she said. You don't have to. Yeah, I do. She pulled back, her eyes serious. You saved my life. And not just by pulling me out of there, by refusing to quit when anyone else would have. That means something. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Colonel Kerr raised a glass. To Major Voss. The best damn ISR officer I've ever worked with and one hell of a leader. Creech's gain is our loss. The room echoed with agreement, with the kind of genuine respect that can't be faked. This, I thought, was my real family. These people who'd served beside me, who'd trusted me with their lives, who'd never once questioned whether I belonged. That night, I finally responded to Ryan's texts. I'm transferring to Nevada next month. I don't think we should talk for a while. I need space to figure out what kind of relationship we can have going forward. If we can have one at all. His response came immediately. That's not fair. We're trying. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, You had years to try. I'm not interested in your guilt. I'm interested in whether you actually respect me. And I don't think you know how. I hit send and turned off my phone. Creech Air Force Base sat in the Nevada desert about 45 miles northwest of Las Vegas, a sprawling complex of hangars and operations centers where UV pilots flew missions over Afghanistan and Iraq from climate-controlled rooms thousands of miles away. The training program I'd been assigned to focused on preparing newly commissioned officers for the psychological realities of remote warfare, the strange disconnection of flying combat missions and then driving home to have dinner with your family. The moral weight of life and death decisions made from behind a computer screen. It was harder than people thought. Harder than I'd thought, before I'd done it myself. My first week, I met with my new team, 8 instructors, all veterans of ISR or UV operations, all carrying their own versions of the scars I'd learned to live with. They're going to expect you to have all the answers, Captain Lewis told me over coffee in the operations center. Fresh lieutenants, straight out of flight school. They think it's going to be like a video game. What do you tell them? I asked. The truth. That killing someone from 7,000 miles away doesn't make it less real. That you're still going to see their faces. That the distance doesn't protect you from the weight of it. I nodded slowly. Good. Keep telling them that. The first class of officers I taught included 12 second lieutenants, all around 23 or 24, all eager and nervous and completely unprepared for what they were about to experience. I stood in front of them in the briefing room and didn't smile. My name is Major Nikki Voss, I said. I've flown ISR missions over 3 combat zones and coordinated airstrikes that have killed more than 200 enemy combatants. I've also made mistakes that cost lives, friendly lives. And I've been injured in combat while trying to fix one of those mistakes. The room was silent. This job will change you, I continued. Not because it's dangerous in the traditional sense. You're not going to get shot at sitting in this chair. But because you're going to make decisions that matter. Life and death decisions. And you're going to have to live with the consequences. One of the lieutenants raised his hand. How do you deal with that, ma'am? You accept that perfect doesn't exist. You do your best with the information you have. You trust your training. And when you make a mistake, you learn from it and you don't make it again. I paused. And you talk to people. Your team, your commanders, the therapists the Air Force provides. Because if you try to carry it alone, it will break you. Another hand. What happened in Kandahar, ma'am? If you don't mind me asking. I minded. But I also understood why they needed to know. I coordinated an extraction operation that went wrong, I said. We lost the element of surprise, took effective fire before we could secure the landing zone. One of our crew was badly injured. I made the decision to hold position and continue the mission rather than abort, which meant staying in a combat zone longer than planned. We got everyone out alive. Barely. And the Purple Heart? Shrapnel from a mortar round. I was luckier than I should have been. The word lucky tasted bitter in my mouth, but I didn't explain why. We ran simulations all afternoon, scenarios that forced the young officers to make impossible choices under time pressure. I watched them struggle with the moral calculus, watched them realize that sometimes there were no good options. Afterward, Lewis caught up with me in the hallway. That was brutal. It needs to be. I know. But maybe go a little easier next time? A couple of them looked like they were going to cry. Better they cry here than freeze in the moment, I said. Lives depend on them making hard calls. I'd rather they learn that now. He nodded slowly. You sound like someone who's been there. We all have. That's why we're here. That night, I called Colonel Kerr to thank him for the recommendation. I think this is exactly where I need to be, I said. I know, he replied. That's why I put your name forward. You've earned this, Voss. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I thought about my family, about the years of jokes and dismissals, about the ceremony where they'd finally seen what I was capable of and still hadn't known how to respond. I won't, I said. And I meant it. 3 months into my assignment at Creech, the Air Force released a public commendation video highlighting recent medal recipients. My Kandahar footage was included, a sanitized version, shorter than what General Sloan had shown at the ceremony, but still powerful enough to go viral on military forums and social media. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed 2 million times. My phone started ringing constantly. Media requests, interview offers, messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. I ignored most of it, directing press inquiries to the Public Affairs Office and letting my voicemail fill up with congratulations from distant acquaintances who suddenly wanted to reconnect. But one message stood out. It was from Captain Marlowe, now recovered enough to be back on active duty. Hey, Voss. Just wanted you to know the squadron's been calling you Iron Viper since the video dropped. Thought you should hear it from me first. It's meant as a compliment. You held the line when no one else could. Wear it proud. Iron Viper. I rolled the nickname around in my head, testing it. It felt right. Stronger than I'd felt in years. That same day, General Sloan's office reached out with a formal request. They wanted me to join a Joint Training Command initiative, working with Army and Marine Corps units to improve inter-service coordination on air support operations. It's a 2-year assignment, the aide explained over the phone. Based at Quantico. High visibility, direct path to lieutenant colonel if you perform well. The general specifically requested you. I accepted immediately. Quantico meant going back to the East Coast. Back to North Carolina territory, though not close enough that my family could just drop by. The assignment itself was prestigious, the kind of position that marked you as someone the Air Force was investing in, someone with a future. My ISR roots had given me credibility with the ground forces I'd be working with. They'd seen what good air support could do, seen what happened when communication broke down between the sky and the dirt. I could help fix that. I submitted my acceptance and started packing for the move. That's when Ryan showed up at my door. I opened it to find him standing in the desert heat, his Marine Corps utilities dusty from travel, his face uncertain in a way I'd never seen before. "How did you find me?" I asked. "Called your old unit. They told me you'd transferred." He shifted his weight. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. He walked into my small base housing unit and looked around, at the bare walls, the packed boxes, the evidence of a life lived in transit. "You're moving again," he said. "New assignment. Quantico. That's closer to home." "That's not why I took it." He nodded slowly, then turned to face me. "I saw the video. Everyone did. It's everywhere, Marine Corps forums, Facebook, Reddit. People are calling you a badass. Good for them." "Nikki, don't," I said. "Don't come here and tell me you're proud now that other people validated what I did. Don't tell me you finally get it because a viral video made it real for you." His jaw tightened. "That's not why I'm here." "Then why are you here?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was rough, strained. "Because I've been an asshole. For years. And I need you to know that I know it." I crossed my arms, waiting. "Dad raised us to think the Marines and Army were the only real combat forces," Ryan continued. "And I bought into it. Completely. I thought you took the easy route, thought you were playing soldier while I was doing the real work. And I made sure you knew it." "Yes, you did. But that video," he stopped, swallowed hard. "Jesus, Nick. I watched you get hit. Watched you keep moving when anyone else would have shut down. I watched you save someone's life while you were bleeding from a head wound. And all I could think was that I've never done anything half that brave." I felt something shift in my chest, but I kept my voice level. "You don't get credit for finally seeing what was always there." "I know." He met my eyes. "I'm not here asking for forgiveness. I'm here to tell you I'm sorry and to ask what I need to do to fix this. If it can be fixed." I studied him, this younger brother who'd spent our whole lives competing with me, trying to prove he was better, stronger, more legitimate. He looked older now, worn down by something I couldn't name. "You called me lucky," I said quietly. "At my Purple Heart ceremony, in front of everyone I respect, you reduced everything I'd done to luck." I was wrong. "You were jealous." The words hung between us. "You were jealous that I got recognized for something you think should only matter when Marines do it. And instead of being happy for me, you tried to make it small." His face reddened, but he didn't argue. "I don't need you to worship me," I continued. "I don't need you to think I'm some kind of hero. I just need you to respect that my service is as real as yours. That my choices are as valid. That I earned my place at the table." "You did," he said. "I see that now. I'm sorry it took this long." I walked to the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water, and handed him one. We stood in silence for a while, the air conditioning humming in the background. "What do you want from me?" I finally asked. "A chance," he said. "Not right now. I know you need time. But eventually, a chance to be your brother again. The real kind. The kind who shows up and actually gives a damn." I sipped my water, considering. "I'm going to Quantico in 3 weeks. After that, I'll be busy for at least a year getting the joint training program off the ground. I don't have time for half measures or performative apologies." "I understand. If you want back in, you're going to have to prove it. Not with words, with actions. Show up. Consistently. Without expecting me to make it easy for you." He nodded. I can do that. We'll see. He set down his glass and moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, that nickname, Iron Viper. It fits. You're tougher than any Marine I've ever served with. I didn't respond. He left quietly. After he was gone, I sat on my couch and pulled out my phone. There was an email from Dad, timestamped that morning. Ryan told me he was going to see you. Hope you'll talk to him. Hope you'll talk to all of us eventually. We love you, kiddo. I closed the email without responding and opened my work calendar instead. Training schedules, coordination meetings, briefings with Army liaisons. Real work. Important work. The kind that didn't require me to justify my existence. Iron Viper. The name felt like armor, like proof that I'd survived not just Kandahar, but everything that came before it. The doubt, the dismissal, the constant need to be twice as good to be seen as half as capable. I'd earned that name. And I'd earned the respect that came with it. Whether my family could catch up was their problem, not mine. Quantico was everything I'd hoped for and nothing I'd expected. The Joint Training Command brought together officers from all branches, Army captains who'd led infantry platoons in Iraq, Marine Corps majors who'd coordinated artillery in Afghanistan, Navy lieutenants who'd managed carrier operations, and Air Force personnel like me who understood the complexity of air support in modern warfare. The goal was simple: improve inter-service communication so that ground forces got the support they needed when they needed it, without the delays and misunderstandings that had cost lives in previous conflicts. The reality was messy, complicated, and absolutely fascinating. My first meeting with the Army liaison, Colonel Marcus Brennan, set the tone. He walked into my office without knocking, dropped a thick folder on my desk, and said, "You're the ISR officer from Kandahar." "That's me." "Good. Then you understand why we're doing this." He opened the folder and pulled out after-action reports from a dozen different operations. "See this? Delayed air support because the ground team called the wrong frequency. And this? Artillery strike called on friendly positions because the coordinates were formatted wrong. And this one's my favorite. Let me guess," I interrupted. "Air Force pilot refused to engage because they couldn't confirm the target?" Bingo. Meanwhile, my guys are getting torn apart by machine gun fire, screaming for support that never comes. He fixed me with a hard look. "So tell me, Major, how do we fix it?" I pulled the folder closer and started reading. "We fix it by teaching everyone to speak the same language. Literally. Joint tactical communications, standardized targeting procedures, cross-training so Army officers understand air capabilities and Air Force officers understand ground realities." That's the theory. That's also the practice, if we do it right. I looked up. "You said you're here because you want this to work." "So do I. Let's figure out how." Over the next 6 months, we built a training program from scratch. We brought in instructors from each branch, designed scenarios that forced officers to work across service lines, and created evaluation metrics that measured not just individual performance, but team coordination. It was brutal work. Long hours, constant friction as different military cultures clashed, endless revisions to curriculum that never seemed quite right. But it worked. By month 8, we were running joint exercises that had Army officers calling in Air Force strikes with precision, Marine Corps forward observers coordinating with Navy close air support, and Air Force UV pilots working directly with special operations teams on the ground. The success rate, measured by mission completion and minimized civilian casualties, was 15% higher than previous joint operations. General Sloan visited during one of our larger exercises and pulled me aside afterward. "This is exactly what we needed," he said. "You're building something that's going to save lives for years to come." "Thank you, sir. I'm putting you up for promotion to Lieutenant Colonel. The paperwork's already in motion." He paused. "You've earned it, boss. Multiple times over." I felt the weight of it, not just the promotion, but the recognition that my career had taken a trajectory that would have seemed impossible when I was a junior officer being mocked by my own family. "I appreciate your confidence, sir." "It's not confidence. It's assessment based on performance." He smiled slightly. "Besides, Iron Viper has a nice ring to it for a lieutenant colonel." The promotion came through 3 months later. I was 38 years old, young for '05, but not unheard of for officers with combat records and proven leadership skills. The ceremony was small, held at Quantico with my team and a handful of senior officers in attendance. Colonel Kerr flew out from Nevada to pin on my new rank insignia, and Captain Marlowe showed up with a bottle of expensive scotch that we shared afterward in my office. To Lieutenant Colonel Voss, Marlowe said, raising her glass. The woman who saved my life and then went on to save everyone else's by teaching them how to actually work together. I'll drink to that, Kerr added. We toasted, and for a moment, everything felt right. Complete. Like I'd finally reached the place I was supposed to be. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Saw your promotion announcement. So proud of you, sweetie. I stared at it for a long moment before setting the phone down. Marlowe noticed. Family? Yeah. Are you going to respond? Eventually, I said. Maybe. The truth was more complicated. Over the past year, my family had tried awkwardly, inconsistently, but genuinely, to rebuild the relationship I'd walked away from. Ryan had sent emails every few weeks, updating me on his life without asking for anything in return. Dad had called twice, leaving voicemails that were stilted but sincere. Mom had sent care packages to each of my new assignments, filled with the kind of practical items that showed she'd been paying attention to what I actually needed. It wasn't enough to erase the years of dismissal, but it was something. I'd responded occasionally, brief texts, short phone calls that didn't go deeper than surface updates. I wasn't ready for more, and I'd told them that directly. I need you to understand that rebuilding trust takes time, I'd said during one particularly difficult conversation with Dad. You don't get to fast forward through the hard part just because you finally realized you were wrong. I know, he'd said. We'll wait. However long it takes. Now, sitting in my office with Marlowe and Kerr, I picked up my phone and typed a response to Mom. Thank you. It's been a long road. Simple. Honest. Not cold, but not warm either. She responded immediately. Can we come to the next ceremony? When you get your command. I paused, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. A command position, if I got one, would be a major milestone. The kind of event where families traditionally showed up, took photos, celebrated together. The kind of event where I'd spent my whole career imagining what it would feel like to have my family actually be proud of me. I typed, let me think about it. Marlowe was watching me with the kind of understanding that only came from shared experience. They're trying, she said quietly. I know. Do you want them there? That was the question, wasn't it? Did I want them there? Or had I moved past needing their validation entirely? I don't know yet, I admitted. Kerr refilled our glasses. Here's what I know, he said. You've built something here that matters. Not just this training program, but a reputation. People respect you, not because of your family or in spite of them, but because of who you are and what you've done. Whether they show up or not doesn't change that. But it matters to you that they show up, Marlowe added. And that's okay. It doesn't make you weak to want your family to see what you've accomplished. I nodded slowly. They were both right, in different ways. That night, alone in my quarters, I pulled out the Purple Heart and looked at it for the first time in months. The metal was cool in my palm, the weight familiar. I thought about the woman I'd been at that ceremony, standing rigid while her family mocked her, holding herself together through sheer force of will. I thought about who I'd become since then. Stronger, yes. More confident. But also more honest about what I needed and what I was willing to accept. I didn't need my family's approval to know my worth. But I wanted their respect. And maybe, just maybe, they were finally ready to give it. I picked up my phone and called Ryan. He answered on the second ring. Hey, I said. I got your message about the promotion. Congratulations. I mean it. Thanks. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I'm thinking about my next steps. Probably going to aim for a command position in the next year or two. That's huge. Yeah, and I'm thinking about what I want that to look like. Who I want there. There was a long silence. Then, are you asking if we'd come? I'm asking if you'd want to. If you'd show up not because you feel guilty or obligated, but because you actually want to be there. Because you're actually proud. I am proud, he said. I know I've done a shit job of showing it, but I am. And yeah, if you invite us, we'll be there. All of us. I need you to understand something, I said. If you come with respect. No jokes, no comments about the Air Force being soft, no comparisons to the Marines or the Army. You come ready to celebrate what I've done, not who you think I should have been. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't just about one ceremony. It's about whether we can have a real relationship. And I won't accept anything less than that anymore. His voice was steady when he replied. I get it, Nick. And I'm here for it. Whatever it takes. Okay, I said. I'll let you know when the time comes. After we hung up, I sat with the feeling, not quite forgiveness, not quite reconciliation, but something in between. A door opening slightly, letting in a sliver of light. It would have to be enough for now. The command position came 18 months later. Commander of the 497th Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Group at Langley Air Force Base, a prestigious assignment overseeing multiple squadrons and hundreds of personnel. At 40 years old, I was one of the youngest full colonels in the Air Force, though the promotion to 06 wouldn't come through until after I'd proven myself in the command role. The change of command ceremony was scheduled for a Friday afternoon in late spring. The weather was perfect, clear skies, mild temperature, the kind of day that made military ceremonies feel almost celebratory instead of merely formal. I'd invited my family. They'd confirmed they were coming a month in advance. Mom had called to ask about hotels, about what to wear, about whether they'd have a chance to see me before the ceremony. Dad had sent a long email about how proud he was, how he'd been telling his veteran friends about his daughter, the colonel. Ryan had simply texted, wouldn't miss it. The morning of the ceremony, I stood in my quarters and put on my dress blues with the kind of care I'd learned at the academy. Every ribbon positioned exactly right, every crease sharp, every detail perfect. The woman looking back at me in the mirror was someone I recognized but hadn't always known. Confident. Accomplished. Carrying her rank with the kind of ease that came from earning it the hard way. My phone buzzed with a text from Marlo. Ready to take over the world? I smiled and typed back, ready to lead my people. That's enough. The ceremony began at 1,400 hours. I stood at attention as the outgoing commander gave his farewell remarks, then listened as General Sloan, now a 2-star, commanding a major Air Force component, read my biography and outlined my qualifications. Lieutenant Colonel Voss has distinguished herself through exceptional leadership in combat operations, joint service training coordination, and tactical innovation, he said. Her record speaks for itself. Purple Heart recipient, Air Force Commendation Medal with 2 oak leaf clusters, Combat Action Medal, and the respect of every officer she's served alongside. I kept my eyes forward, my posture perfect. Then came the moment I'd been both anticipating and dreading. The general gestured toward the audience. Lieutenant Colonel Voss's family is here today, and I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the sacrifices that military families make in support of their service members. I glanced toward the rows of folding chairs set up on the parade ground. There they were, Mom in a Navy dress, Dad in his old Army dress uniform, Ryan in his Marine Corps blues. They stood when their section was acknowledged, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in their faces that wasn't skepticism or dismissal. It was pride. Genuine, uncomplicated pride. Dad saluted, sharp and crisp, the way he'd taught me when I was a kid playing soldier in the backyard. I felt something shift in my chest, but I kept my composure. The ceremony continued. I assumed command, accepted the guidance from the outgoing commander, gave my first official remarks as the leader of the 497th. I'm honored to take command of this group, I said, projecting my voice across the parade ground. Our mission is critical, providing intelligence and reconnaissance that saves lives and enables our joint force partners to operate effectively. I expect excellence from every member of this team, and I promise to lead by example. Together, we'll continue the proud tradition of this unit while pushing forward into the future of Air Force operations. The speech was professional, focused, exactly what a change of command address should be. But as I spoke, I added something I hadn't planned. Throughout my career, I've learned that respect isn't owed to rank, it's earned by how you show up under pressure, how you treat your people, and whether you have the courage to stand for what's right even when it costs you something. That's the standard I'll hold myself to, and it's what I'll expect from all of us. I caught Ryan's eye in the audience. He nodded slightly, understanding the message behind my words. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the officers' club. People congratulated me, shook my hand, told stories about serving with me or hearing about my reputation. My new command team introduced themselves, eager and nervous in the way that always happened during leadership transitions. And through it all, my family waited. They hung back, letting the professional obligations take precedence, not pushing for attention. When I finally made my way over to them, Mom was crying, happy tears this time, not the confused grief from the Purple Heart ceremony. "Nikki," she said, pulling me into a hug. "That was beautiful." "Thanks, Mom." Dad stepped forward, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. Then he extended his hand, formal, respectful, the way one veteran greets another. "Colonel," he said. "That's a hell of an accomplishment." I shook his hand, then pulled him into a brief hug. "It took a while to get here." "You earned every step," he said. "I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner." Ryan was last. He'd matured in the past 2 years, filled out, carried himself with more confidence, looked less like a kid trying to prove something and more like a man who'd figured out what actually mattered. "Congratulations, sis," he said. "That speech was perfect. And for the record, I've been telling everyone I know that my sister's a badass colonel in the Air Force." I smiled despite myself. Yeah. Figured it was about time I got it right. We stood together for a while, talking about nothing important, the weather, their drive down, whether they'd have time to see the base before they left. Normal family conversation, the kind I'd watched other people have for years without knowing if I'd ever have it myself. Later, after most of the guests had left, I walked them to their car. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed almost impossibly beautiful. "Thank you for coming," I said. "Of course," Mom said. "We'll always come. If you want us to." "I want you to," I said. And I meant it. They drove away as the last light faded from the sky, and I stood in the parking lot for a moment, breathing in the evening air. Captain Marlowe walked up beside me. "How does it feel?" "Like I finally have both things," I said. "The career I built and the family I needed them to be." "Good," she said. "You deserve both." "So do you," I told her. "Which is why I'm making you my deputy commander. If you'll take it." Her eyes went wide. "Seriously?" "Seriously. I need someone I trust, someone who understands what we're trying to build here. You're the best choice." She grinned. "Then I accept." We walked back toward the operations building together, already talking about transition plans, about the changes we wanted to make, about the future we'd build for our group. Behind us, the base was quiet, settling into evening routine. Above us, the first stars were beginning to appear. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from the kid who'd joined ROTC hoping to earn her family's approval, to the captain bleeding on a tarmac in Kandahar, to the lieutenant colonel taking command of her own unit. I thought about the woman in that video, the one the world had seen and called Iron Viper. The one who'd refused to quit even when quitting would have been easier. That woman and I were the same person. We always had been. I just finally had a family who could see it. 6 months into my command, I was invited to speak at the Air Force Academy graduation ceremony. The invitation came from the superintendent himself, a 3-star general I'd worked with briefly during my joint training assignment. "We want someone who can inspire the new lieutenants," he'd said over the phone. "Someone who represents what it means to serve with distinction." I accepted, though public speaking had never been my favorite part of command. The speech took weeks to write. I went through a dozen drafts, trying to find the right balance between inspiration and realism, between telling my story and making it about the graduates instead of myself. Finally, I settled on something simple and honest. The day of the graduation was pristine, Colorado Springs at its best, with the mountains sharp against a brilliant blue sky. 2,000 cadets sat in perfect formation, their dress uniforms immaculate, their faces young and eager and scared in equal measure. I stood at the podium and looked out at them, remembering what it had felt like to sit in those same seats, waiting to begin a career I wasn't sure I was ready for. Congratulations, graduates, I began. Today, you receive your commissions as officers in the United States Air Force. It's an honor you've earned through 4 years of hard work, sacrifice, and dedication. But the truth is, the real test starts now. I paused, letting the words sink in. You're going to face challenges you can't imagine yet. You're going to make decisions that keep you awake at night. You're going to lead people who are counting on you to have all the answers, even when you don't. And you're going to doubt yourself, your choices, your abilities, your place in this service. The graduates were listening intently now. When I was commissioned, I had people in my life who told me I'd chosen the wrong branch, that I wasn't cut out for real military service, that I'd taken the easy path. And I believed them sometimes. I questioned whether I belonged, whether I was good enough, whether I'd ever earn the respect I was working so hard for. I thought about my father's laugh at the barbecue, Ryan's smirk at the Purple Heart ceremony, all the small cuts that had added up to a wound I'd carried for years. But here's what I learned: respect isn't owed to rank. It's earned by how you show up under fire, literally and figuratively. It's earned by doing your job when it's hard, when it's scary, when every instinct tells you to quit. It's earned by leading with integrity, by putting your people first, by refusing to accept anything less than excellence from yourself. I saw some of the graduates nodding, recognizing themselves in the struggle I was describing. Some of you will deploy to combat zones. Some will coordinate missions from thousands of miles away. Some will lead training programs, manage logistics, fly aircraft, or analyze intelligence. Every job matters. Every role is critical. And every single one of you has the potential to make a difference. I gripped the sides of the podium, letting the weight of my next words settle. But you only make that difference if you refuse to let anyone, including yourself, diminish your service. You belong here. You earn this commission. And whatever challenges come next, you're ready for them. Not because you're perfect, but because you're committed to being better every single day. The graduates erupted in applause. I let it wash over me, then raised a hand for quiet. One last thing, I said. Years from now, when you've built your careers and earned your own commands, someone's going to ask you what made the difference. What turned you from a second lieutenant trying to figure it out into a leader people trust with their lives? And the answer is simple: you showed up. When it mattered most, when everything was on the line, you showed up and did your job. I stepped back from the podium. Congratulations again, graduates. Now go prove what you're made of. The applause was thunderous this time. The graduates stood, 2,000 newly commissioned officers rising as one, and I felt the weight of their expectation, their hope, their determination to make their service matter. After the ceremony, dozens of them came up to thank me, to ask questions, to tell me they'd seen the Kandahar footage and it had inspired them to push through the hardest parts of their training. One young woman, brand new Second Lieutenant Garcia, shook my hand and said, "I want to do what you did. ISR, leading people, making a difference. What's the first step?" "The first step," I said, "is accepting that it won't be easy. That you'll face resistance, sometimes from places you don't expect. But if you're committed to the mission and your people, you'll figure it out." "I'm committed," she said fiercely. "Good. Then you'll be fine." My family had come to the graduation, all 3 of them, driving up from North Carolina to watch me speak. Afterward, we had dinner at a restaurant near the academy, the conversation easy in a way it had never been before. Dad told stories about his own career, but this time they weren't about proving he'd seen more combat or done more dangerous things. They were just stories, memories shared without agenda. Ryan talked about his plans to apply for officer candidate school, to follow a path similar to mine even though he'd started as enlisted. "Figured if my sister can be a colonel, I should at least try for lieutenant," he said with a grin. Mom just kept looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite name, pride mixed with regret, love mixed with the understanding that we'd lost time we could never get back. "You're going to make a general someday," she said quietly. "Maybe," I said. "But I'm happy right where I am." And it was true. Command suited me. Leading the 497th, mentoring younger officers, building programs that would save lives, this was exactly where I was supposed to be. We drove back to Virginia the next day, the four of us in Dad's truck, talking about everything and nothing. Ryan played music from his phone, classic rock, mostly, the kind Dad had always loved, and Mom dozed in the passenger seat. At one point, Dad caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "You know," he said, "when you first told us you were joining the Air Force, I thought you were making a mistake." I know. I was wrong. About a lot of things. But especially that. "Yeah," I said. "You were. I'm glad you didn't listen to me." I smiled. Me too. 3 years later, the promotion to full colonel came through. At 43, I pinned on 06 and took command of an entire intelligence wing, multiple groups, thousands of personnel, oversight of critical intelligence operations across 3 theaters. It was the culmination of everything I'd worked for and the beginning of a new chapter. My family was there, of course. They'd become fixtures at my major career milestones, showing up with genuine enthusiasm and none of the skepticism that had marked our earlier years. But the ceremony wasn't really about them anymore. It was about the work, the mission, the people I was honored to lead. General Sloan, now a 3-star, pinned on my colonel insignia and said, "I've known a lot of officers in my career, Voss. You're one of the best. Don't let it go to your head." "No chance of that, sir." He smiled. "Good. Because we need you exactly as you are, focused, driven, and absolutely unwilling to accept mediocrity." After the ceremony, Marlowe, now a major herself, still serving as my deputy, raised a glass at the reception. "To Colonel Voss," she said, "who saved my life in Kandahar, taught a generation of officers how to lead, and proved that strength doesn't come from being the loudest person in the room. It comes from knowing who you are and refusing to apologize for it." The room echoed with agreement. I looked around at the people gathered, my team, my family, the officers I'd mentored, and the commanders I'd served with. Every one of them represented a piece of the journey that had brought me here. And I realized something that had been building for years, but only now came into focus. I'd won. Not in the petty sense, not by proving my family wrong or showing them up, but in the deeper, more important sense. I'd built a career on my own terms. I'd earned the respect of people who mattered. I'd led with integrity and made a difference that would outlast me. I'd become the officer, the person I'd always wanted to be. And whether my family had seen it from the beginning or learned to see it later didn't change the fundamental truth. I'd known my worth all along. I just had to live long enough for the world to catch up. That night, after everyone had left and I was alone in my quarters, I took out the Purple Heart one more time. The metal had aged slightly, the ribbon faded at the edges, but the meaning remained unchanged. I'd earned this in Kandahar, bleeding and scared and absolutely refusing to quit. But in a way, I'd been earning it my whole life. Every time I stood up under pressure, every time I refused to let doubt win, every time I chose to show up and do my job even when no one was watching or cared. Respect is an ode to rank. It's earned by how you show up under fire. I'd shown up. Again and again and again. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. The quiet power of dignity under fire. Justice through truth. Strength through composure. I set the medal back in its case and closed it gently. Tomorrow, I'd go back to work. Back to leading my wing. Back to the mission. Back to the daily challenges of command. But tonight, I let myself feel something I'd never quite allowed before: satisfaction. Not pride exactly, and not vindication. Just the simple, quiet knowledge that I'd done what I set out to do. I'd earned my place at the table. And no one, not my family, not my doubts, not the voice in my head that had whispered for years that I wasn't enough, could take that away from me. I was Colonel Nikki Voss, United States Air Force. I was Iron Viper. And I'd finally come home to myself. 1 year later, I stood in the Pentagon briefing room, presenting intelligence assessments to a Joint Chiefs Working Group. The faces around the table represented the highest levels of military leadership, generals and admirals who'd spent decades earning their stars. I was the only colonel in the room. The ISR integration protocols we've implemented have reduced response times by 32%, I said, advancing to the next slide. More importantly, they've eliminated the communication breakdowns that previously resulted in friendly fire incidents and missed target opportunities. An Army general, 3 stars, with a combat infantry badge and a chest full of ribbons, leaned forward. Colonel Voss, your numbers are impressive. But I'm curious about real-world application. Have these protocols been tested under actual combat conditions? Yes, sir. We've had 7 live operations in the past 6 months using the new framework. All 7 resulted in successful mission completion with 0 friendly casualties and minimal civilian impact. He nodded slowly. Then I'd say we need to expand this across all theaters. How soon can you make that happen? With proper resources and command support, we could have full implementation within 18 months. Make it 12, he said. This is too important to delay. After the briefing, I gathered my materials and headed toward the exit. A Marine Corps Major General caught up with me in the hallway, a man I recognized from Joint Operations forums, but had never worked with directly. Colonel Voss, he said. That was outstanding. I've been following your career since the Kandahar footage went public. It's rare to see an officer who can bridge tactical excellence with strategic thinking. Thank you, sir. I'm serious. You're on the fast track to stars. Don't let anyone tell you different. I nodded, accepting the compliment without false modesty. I appreciate that, sir. The work matters more than the rank, but I won't pretend the recognition doesn't mean something. He smiled. Good answer. Keep that attitude, and you'll go far. I drove back to Langley that afternoon, thinking about the trajectory my career had taken. From the daughter who couldn't earn her father's respect to a colonel briefing the Joint Chiefs. From the captain bleeding in Kandahar to the officer whose protocols were being adopted across the entire military. The distance between those 2 versions of myself felt impossible sometimes. Other times, it felt inevitable, like every hard moment had been preparing me for exactly this. My phone rang as I pulled onto base. Mom's name on the screen. Hey, I answered. Hi, sweetie. How was the Pentagon? Good. Productive. They're adopting our protocols military-wide. That's wonderful. Her voice was warm, genuine. Your father's going to be so excited. He's been bragging to everyone at the VFW about his daughter's intelligence work. I smiled despite myself. Tell him I said thanks. Tell him yourself. We're coming down next weekend for Ryan's commissioning ceremony. You're still planning to be there, right? Ryan's OCS graduation. He'd followed through on his plan, spent the last year grinding through officer candidate school while serving in the reserves. In 3 days, he'd pin on his butter bars and become a Marine Corps second lieutenant. I'll be there, I said. Wouldn't miss it. He's nervous, Mom admitted. Keeps saying he hopes he can live up to the example you set. Something shifted in my chest, not pride exactly, but something close to it. He'll do fine. He's worked hard for this. That weekend, I drove to Quantico in my dress blues. The ceremony was smaller than my academy graduation had been, but the weight of it felt just as significant. 43 candidates stood in formation, ready to receive their commissions and begin their service as officers. Ryan was in the 3rd row, his posture perfect, his face serious in a way I'd never seen before. He'd grown up in the past few years, not just physically, but in the way he carried himself. Less arrogant, more grounded. When his name was called, he marched forward to receive his commission. Dad stepped up to pin on his second lieutenant bars, a tradition, passing rank from one generation to the next. But then Ryan did something unexpected. He turned to where I was sitting and gestured for me to join them. I hesitated, then stood and walked to the front. The ceremony paused as I reached them. Sir, Ryan said to the officiating officer, permission to have my sister participate in the pinning? The officer nodded. Granted. Dad handed me one of the gold bars. Our eyes met, and he smiled, not the dismissive smile from years ago, but something real and warm. Together, we pinned Ryan's rank. Dad on the left shoulder, me on the right. Congratulations, Second Lieutenant Voss, I said quietly. Thank you, ma'am, he replied, formal in front of the audience. Then lower. Thank you for showing me what this really means. After the ceremony, we gathered for photos. The 4 of us together, Dad in his Army uniform, me in my Air Force blues, Ryan in his Marine Corps greens, Mom holding us all together like she'd always tried to do. Look at this, Dad said, shaking his head in wonder. 3 generations of service. 2 branches. All standing here together. 3 branches, I corrected, gesturing to Ryan and myself. Right. 3 branches. He pulled us both into a rough hug. I'm proud of both of you. So damn proud. We had dinner that night at a restaurant near base, the conversation flowing easily. Ryan talked about his assignment, infantry officer, headed to Camp Pendleton for training before deployment. Dad offered advice about leading enlisted personnel, about earning respect rather than demanding it. Listen to your NCOs, Dad said. They know more than you do, especially at first. Your job is to make decisions, but their job is to make sure those decisions actually work on the ground. Colonel Voss told me the same thing, Ryan said, glancing at me. Well, not exactly the same. She said my job was to be humble enough to learn and confident enough to lead. I raised my glass. Still good advice. The best advice, he agreed. Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You've done so much for him. For all of us. Showing us what real leadership looks like. I just did my job, I said. Same as anyone. No, Dad said firmly. Not the same as anyone. Better than most. You set a standard that made us all want to meet it. I felt tears threatening and blinked them back. After all these years, after all the fights and disappointments and slow rebuilding, this was what I'd needed. Not just their pride, but their understanding. Their recognition that what I'd built mattered. We stayed late, talking until the restaurant started closing down around us. Stories and laughter, plans for future visits, the easy comfort of family that had finally figured out how to be family. Driving back to Langley that night, I thought about the girl I'd been at 17, announcing her ROTC scholarship while her family laughed. I thought about the captain dragging her teammate across a tarmac in Kandahar. The major standing silent while her brother called her lucky. The lieutenant colonel taking command while her family watched with real pride for the first time. And now, the colonel who'd helped her brother become an officer, who'd earned respect not through loudness or force, but through consistency and competence and refusing to quit. The journey hadn't been linear. It hadn't been easy. But it had been mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Thanks for being there today. And for being there all the times before when I didn't deserve it. You're the best officer I know, and I'm going to spend my whole career trying to be half as good as you. I pulled over to respond properly. You'll be better than me in ways I can't imagine yet. That's how this works. We lift each other up. Proud of you, little brother. His reply came immediately. Proud of you too, sis. Always have been, even when I was too stupid to show it. I smiled and pulled back onto the highway, heading home to the life I'd built through sheer determination and refusal to accept anything less than what I deserved. The road ahead was clear. The mission continued. And for the first time in my life, I had both things that mattered, the career I'd earned and the family I'd needed them to become. Iron Viper. Colonel. Sister. Leader. All of it true. All of it mine. Thanks for watching. If this hit home, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs backup today. Your turn. Have you ever had to prove your worth to family, or choose not to? What boundary did you set that finally changed the dynamic? Did a single moment of truth, a message, video, or receipt ever flip the script for you? Drop your story and where you're tuning in from in the comments. I read everyone.